There is a certain kind of person who steps outside their front door and immediately feels the world pressing back. The street is ordinary. The people are strangers minding their own business. Nothing is threatening by any measurable standard. But something in them counts the steps back to their room the moment they leave it, the way a diver counts the meters back to the surface. Inside their room, they breathe differently. The shoulders drop. The jaw unclenches. The particular tension that lives somewhere between their throat and their chest quietly dissolves. Their room is not just a space. It is the only geography on Earth where their nervous system fully believes, even temporarily, that nothing is about to go wrong. But if you know someone like this, or if you are someone like this, then you already know that this is not laziness. It is not shyness in the simple sense. It is not a phase or a preference that could be corrected by simply going outside more. It is a deeply wired psychological response to a world that, at some point, stopped feeling safe enough to inhabit without armor. Today we are going to decode the psychology of people who feel safe only in their room. Why the brain designates one small space as sanctuary while treating the rest of the world as threat. How this pattern forms, how it deepens, and how it quietly reshapes an entire life around its requirements. And most importantly, what the path back to the world actually looks like for people who have stopped trusting it. So why does this happen? Why do some people move through crowded cities and busy offices and full social calendars without their nervous system sounding a single alarm, while others feel a visceral relief the moment a door closes between them and everyone else? The answer, as both neuroscience and attachment psychology reveal, almost never begins with the room. It begins long before the room became necessary. The first group arrives here through neurology. Psychologist Elaine Aron identified sensory processing sensitivity, or SPS, as a trait present in roughly 20% of the population. These highly sensitive persons, or HSPs, possess nervous systems that process sensory and social information at a depth that is neurologically measurable. Noise, crowds, social unpredictability, fluorescent lighting, small talk that carries hidden emotional weight, all of it registers at a volume others simply do not experience. The second group built this pattern through experience. Picture a child whose home was the unpredictable one on the street. The one where the atmosphere could shift without warning. Where outside was sometimes an escape and inside was sometimes the danger, and there was no consistent geography of safety anywhere. That child began, quietly and methodically, to construct one. A corner. A closet. A bedroom with a lock. Somewhere the variables could be controlled. In both groups, the amygdala becomes the architect of this geography. When the amygdala registers a space as safe, it does so through associative memory. It links the sensory details of that space, the smell, the light, the sound, the temperature, with the felt absence of threat. Over time, the room does not just feel comfortable. It becomes neurologically encoded as the one place where the alarm system is genuinely permitted to rest. What began as a reasonable response became a self-reinforcing system. Each return to the room after a difficult outing confirms the comparison. Out there was hard. In here is safe. The brain, built for efficiency, draws the logical conclusion and begins to advocate for minimizing the hard and maximizing the safe. What started as refuge quietly became a default. And then, for some, the default became the only option they could access without significant internal resistance. So when this enters adult life, it does not look like hiding. It looks like cancelling plans at the last minute because something in the body simply would not cooperate with going. It looks like working from home with a relief that goes far beyond convenience. It looks like a social calendar that keeps shrinking and a bedroom that keeps expanding in importance until the room is not just where they sleep but where they live, in the fullest sense of the word. The first and most defining pattern is that their relationship with the outside world is governed not by desire or choice, but by a nervous system that has designated outside as the threat zone and inside as the only neutral ground. They accept an invitation on a Tuesday and genuinely mean it. By Friday evening, something has shifted. Not a thought, not a decision, but a physical reality. Their chest is tighter. Their stomach has changed. The prospect of the event that seemed manageable 4 days ago now feels like climbing something without a rope. They cancel. They feel guilty. They close the door. They breathe again. This cycle is maintained by the amygdala's threat response system working in partnership with hypervigilance, the nervous system state of sustained alertness. The amygdala has learned to anticipate social environments as high cost even before they occur. The anticipation alone triggers a cortisol release, and the body begins its stress response hours before the event. By the time Friday arrives, they are not imagining difficulty. They are already experiencing it physiologically. The emotional consequence is a private war between what they want and what their body will allow. They want connection. They want experience. They want to be the person who shows up. But the gap between wanting and doing is filled with a physical resistance that feels less like reluctance and more like a wall they will alone cannot move. And after the cancelled plans come the shame, and after the shame comes the isolation, and after the isolation the room becomes both prison and the only relief from the prison simultaneously. And that shame pulls them directly into the second pattern, which is that they have become extraordinarily skilled at constructing reasons for why they cannot be somewhere that protect them from having to admit what the real reason actually is. They are tired. They are under the weather. There is work they need to finish. The timing is not quite right. They will definitely come to the next one. These are not lies, exactly. They are translations. The real sentence, the one that lives beneath all of them, is that their nervous system communicated something this morning that they do not know how to put into words that will make sense to someone who has never felt it. So they translate it into something that will. The prefrontal cortex is working hard here, generating socially acceptable narratives to manage the gap between internal reality and external expectation. This is not deception born of carelessness. It is metacognition deployed in service of survival, the brain observing its own state, recognizing that the true state is difficult to communicate, and constructing a bridge that keeps the relationship intact while also protecting the person from a vulnerability they are not yet equipped to offer. The emotional consequence is a loneliness that is entirely invisible to the people around them. Their friends think they are busy. Their family thinks they are tired. No one thinks to look beneath the reason to the person who has been standing in the same room, behind the same door, trying to find the words for a feeling that arrived before language did. They are surrounded by people who care and simultaneously completely unreachable by any of them. The third pattern is one that surprises people who assume those who stay home must be introverts who prefer solitude. The truth is that many of them are deeply, achingly social. They want connection more than almost anything. They simply cannot trust the environments in which connection is supposed to happen. They spend hours on their phone, texting friends, engaging in conversations that are warm and funny and fully present. They make plans they genuinely want to keep. They watch videos of the places other people go and feel real longing. But the moment the plan becomes concrete, the moment the time and address are confirmed, something in their body produces a response that their mind interprets as a verdict. Not yet. Not today. Maybe not ever. This disconnect is rooted in the insular cortex, which processes interoception, the brain's moment-to-moment sensing of the body's internal state. In people whose nervous systems have been calibrated toward threat, the insular cortex has learned to generate physical signals of discomfort in response to social anticipation. They feel the discomfort in their body before they have consciously decided anything. The body votes first. The mind, loyal to the body, finds reasons to honor the vote. The emotional consequence is a profound grief that rarely gets named as grief. They are mourning the version of their life they can picture but cannot currently inhabit. The birthday party they wanted to attend. The trip they planned and didn't take. The friendship that slowly dissolved because they could not make it to the physical spaces where friendships are maintained. This is not laziness accumulating. This is loss, quiet and continuous, building up behind a closed door. The fourth pattern is that their room has become a space of such elaborate psychological significance that it is almost impossible to explain to someone who has not needed one. It is not just where they sleep. It is the external proof that safety can exist anywhere at all. They arrange it with a specificity that looks like preference but is actually precision. The lamp at exactly that angle. The chair facing the door. The window that must be slightly open. The specific blanket that has been on that specific chair for 3 years. Each element is not decoration. Each element is a variable they have eliminated. In a world that cannot be controlled, they have engineered one room where control is total. And total control is what rest requires for a nervous system that never fully powers down. This behavior reflects the default mode network, or DMN, in its restorative function. The DMN, the brain's resting state processing system, can only genuinely activate when the amygdala has released its grip on threat scanning. In environments the brain trusts, this transition happens automatically. In untrusted environments, the DMN cannot fully engage. The room is the only place where the brain has accumulated enough safety evidence to let the DMN do its work. Genuine rest requires earned trust, and the room has earned it. The emotional consequence is that the room begins to do something rooms were never designed to do. It begins to carry the entire weight of their psychological well-being. And anything that carries the entire weight of a human being's inner life will, eventually, begin to feel less like freedom and more like the most comfortable possible confinement. The fifth pattern is that their relationship with their own body has become strained in a very specific way. They have learned to distrust the signals their body sends in public spaces, because those signals have been so consistently negative that they have stopped feeling like information and started feeling like verdicts. They walk into a grocery store and their heart rate rises slightly. They do not know why. Nothing is happening. They move through the aisles quickly, not because they are in a hurry, but because their body has decided this environment is costing something and wants to stop spending. By the time they are back in their car, they feel as though they have completed something strenuous, and by the time they are home, they are done with the outside world for the day. The science here involves cortisol and the body's stress response system operating at a chronic low threshold. People whose amygdalae have been calibrated toward threat do not experience stress only during objectively threatening events. They experience a mild but continuous cortisol elevation in any environment that has not been encoded as safe. The grocery store is not dangerous, but it is not the room. And the body, ever loyal to its training, behaves accordingly. The emotional consequence is that the body, which should be an ally in navigating the world, begins to feel like an obstacle. They cannot trust what it tells them, because what it tells them is disproportionate to what is actually happening. They are not in danger in the cereal aisle. But their body does not know that yet. And learning to trust a body that has been sending inaccurate alarms for years requires a patience and a gentleness that no one told them they were going to need. The sixth pattern is the one that lives deepest. It is that somewhere beneath the preference for home, beneath the comfort of the room, beneath every practical reason they give for staying in, there is a belief, quiet and persistent, that the world outside will cost them something they cannot afford to lose. They cannot always name what that something is. Sometimes it is dignity. Sometimes it is the performance of normalcy they can only sustain for so long before the effort becomes visible. Sometimes it is the risk of being truly seen, needs and fears and limitations included, by people who might find what they see to be too much. The room does not ask them to perform. The room does not evaluate. The room simply is, and in being simply itself, it offers them the one thing the world outside consistently fails to provide: unconditional presence. This pattern is held in place by mirror neurons and what psychologists call theory of mind, the brain's capacity to model how others perceive us. In people with hypervigilant nervous systems, the theory of mind runs continuously in social environments, generating real-time simulations of how they appear, how they sound, whether they are being judged, and whether the judgment is likely to be favorable. This simulation runs at a cognitive cost the room never charges. Outside, they are always on stage. Inside, the curtain can come down. The emotional consequence is that the person they are in their room, the full, unguarded, unperformed version, is a person almost no one in their life has ever fully met. They have friends who know the performed version. Family who knows the managed version. But the version that exists when the door is closed and the phone is down and there is nothing left to maintain, that version is essentially alone. Known only to a room that cannot speak and a self that has almost forgotten it is allowed to exist in the presence of other people. And all of these patterns, the cancelled plans, the translated reasons, the longing without movement, the engineered sanctuary, the distrusted body, the belief in an affordable cost, all of them were built by a nervous system doing exactly what nervous systems are designed to do. Finding the safest available option and returning to it, reliably, every time. The room is not the problem. It is the solution a very intelligent, very tired brain arrived at when the world stopped offering anything better. And here is what most people never stop to realize about people who feel safe only in their room. They are not hiding from life because they do not value it. They are hiding from life because they value it so enormously that the thought of it going wrong, again, in the specific ways it has gone wrong before, is more than their nervous system currently knows how to survive. Their retreat is not indifference. It is evidence of just how much they feel. And feeling that much, without the tools to metabolize it, eventually brings anyone back through the same door. So what can they do? They cannot simply decide to find the world less threatening. The amygdala does not respond to instructions or pep talks or motivational advice. They cannot will their body into a different calibration. But they can work with the biology they have, rather than against it, through 3 principles that neuroscience and psychology together confirm are genuinely capable of moving the threshold of what feels survivable. The first principle is to expand the room rather than abandon it. Instead of forcing themselves into large, unpredictable environments and measuring the failure when the body refuses, they begin with one small adjacent space and stay there long enough for the amygdala to collect neutral data. A bench outside the front door for 10 minutes. A coffee shop for 1 hour with a book as an anchor. Not performance. Not exposure as punishment. Expansion as gentle, consistent, biological re-education. The prefrontal cortex, given enough calm repetition, can begin to revise the amygdala's filed verdict on a space. The second principle is to give the body language for what it is experiencing, because interoception without language keeps the nervous system in a loop it cannot exit. When they feel the chest tighten in a public space, they name it precisely and internally. This is my amygdala measuring an unfamiliar environment. This is cortisol doing its job. This is not danger. This is data. The naming creates a slight separation between the signal and the response. That separation, practiced consistently, is where the first evidence of agency lives. The third principle is to build one relationship that can exist both inside and outside the room. Not a crowd. Not a social life rebuilt overnight. One person who is allowed to see both versions, the room version and the public version, without the public version having to be better or more capable or more together. The mirror neurons that have been calibrated to expect judgment need new evidence. One safe witness, consistent and unjudging, provides more neurological recalibration than any number of forced social events managed in performance mode. When they practice this letting go, not of the room, which served them faithfully, but of the belief that the room is the only place they are allowed to be themselves, something begins to shift at the cellular level. The amygdala's territory of safety slowly expands. The insular cortex begins receiving different signals from the same environments. The world does not become smaller in its demands, but they become, gradually and genuinely, larger in their capacity to meet it. They were never meant to be a candle kept inside a jar, burning beautifully in private, seen only by the walls that knew them best. They were always a light capable of moving through open space, steady in wind, warm in darkness, available to more rooms than the one that saved them. And the moment they begin to carry their safety with them rather than return to it, they will discover that the room was never the source of the safety. They were. They always were. These are people who think deeply, feel with a precision that borders on the extraordinary, and love the world with a tenderness they have not yet found a way to show it. Their room is not a failure. It is the evidence of a person who kept something worth protecting alive, in the only way they knew how, until something better became available. They are not broken. They are mid-becoming. And that, by any honest measure, is one of the most hopeful things a person can be. If this feels familiar, leave a comment about which pattern felt most like your own experience. Even one word is enough. Because every person who types something true in the comment section is doing something quietly brave, and someone else is going to read that word at exactly the moment they needed to know they were not the only one living this particular kind of quietly. If this video helped you feel understood, or helped you understand someone whose world has grown very small, please press like and share it with a friend who might need to hear that what they feel has a name, a reason, and a way through it. Thank you so much for watching. Do not forget to subscribe, because every week we go deeper into the psychology of what it means to be human, especially in the parts of that experience that are hardest to explain and most deserving of being finally, carefully, seen.